Ex-Bullies of Reddit, what was your turning point? I attended elementary/middle and a year of high school in a economically depressed working class town, where the mills had closed down, and families were hanging on by threads, if at all. It was a nightmare, like living in a prison. Bullying was rampant through the entire culture, even the teachers would bully kids in unspeakable ways. So yeah, to my shame, I also bullied kids, just as I was being bullied by others. When I moved away to a different city, where bullying was not part of the culture, I suddenly found that I had no desire to be mean to other kids. I no longer felt seeing people humiliated or afraid was funny or gratifying in any way, and not having to feel that way myself was absolutely liberating. In fact, I suddenly found it kind of repulsive on the rare occasion where I witnessed someone being bullied. I once saw a friend of mine bullying some nerdy kid and actually found myself telling him to cut it out and leave him be, something I would never have done in my previous schools. I myself never bullied anyone again after I left that shit town. Years ago there was an experiment where a rat would be given an electrical shock periodically at random intervals. He would become terribly stressed out and miserable and start behaving neurotically. Then, a new rat would be introduced to the cage, and the rat that had been shocked would suddenly attack the new rat with a bizarre ferocity. Now the new rat would be stressed out, miserable and neurotic, but the shocked rat would calm down and be just fine, as if all the pain and fear that had been imposed on him had simply been transferred to the new rat. I think once you understand this about rats, you come to understand a lot about people. In middle school, me and another girl hit off really well because we both shared a love for video games and anime, and we always stuck up for each other because we did get teased a little for our hobbies. Fast forward to high school, I started hanging out with a group of cool girls, and they always made fun of my friend. Because I was with them, I thought it was okay to do it too, so I also teased her and left her out in a lot of my activities. This continued on for 2 years, and in the middle of our junior year she sent me a text message that made me reconsider probably every single life decision I've made. Hey brain, I've known you for almost 5 years and have always considered you as my best friend, but I know people move on and drift. That being said, if you don't want to hang out with me anymore, I wish you told me to my face instead of visibly moving away from me and mocking me. I wish you all the best. I sat on that for weeks and weeks, and finally during senior year, I left that group of girls, who I later found were not so cool, and decided to apologize to my friend. I said I was an idiot, and I was so concerned with high school popularity I threw away probably my most important friendships. It's been another 5 years since then, and she and I are still really close. It's one point in our lives we don't talk about because I'm still really ashamed about it, but I'm glad she's forgiven me and has become one of my most supportive friends today. I was on the receiving side, but I can definitely tell you a point in time that made some of them wake up, as it were. So some public schools in Australia have one period a week for certain age groups. Mine was for grade 10. To talk you youth group people, to help us learn proper sex manners, how to behave in real life, stuff like that, but be super cool about it. And one day the topic of bullying came up, and about halfway through, after doing the "this is how it can ruin lives" thing, they asked the group who has been bullied. About a dozen put our hands up, including me. Now I enjoyed these talks, so I would be near the front most of the time, and as I'm looking around back as to who else put their hand up out of curiosity, I was starting to notice that my bullies were averting their eyes/heads. Not once again was I bullied from another in my grade, until I dropped out at the start of G12. To this day, I've gotten 2 apologies, and let me tell you, they meant and still do mean a whole lot. So, if you feel sorry for what you've done, and have the means, please say it to them. They might even forgive you like I have. I bullied this one boy and one girl when I was a kid. Don't know why really, I simply did. The boy was younger than me, and I made him go home every time I saw him at the playground. If he wouldn't, I'd slap him around a bit until he did. The girl was my age and much bigger than me, but I was still the bully. I stopped bullying the boy on his first day of school, my first day of 3rd grade. He saw me in the schoolyard and immediately started crying and ran inside. That's when I realized he was actually afraid of me, and the bullying stopped being funny. The girl got me off bullying for good. We were at a 7-day vacation out of town, and I tortured that poor girl for days. Called her names, pulled boards from under her mattress so she would fall, rubbed toothpaste on her hands while she was sleeping, all kinds of nasty shit. On the 5th day she finally had enough and just walked away. A 10-year-old kid walked away on her own into the woods. No one could find her the whole day. I actually got really scared that something would happen to her because of me. She finally appeared in the evening, alive and well. She was hiding nearby and watched us look for her the whole day, only came out when she got hungry. I never bullied anyone mentally or physically ever again. I was one mean kid. I have a feeling this will hit close to home for some people. In grade school I was kind of a bully. I say kind of, because it was mostly just kid stuff and I wasn't vindictive about it like some of the kids in school were, but nonetheless I was not a stellar person. In about 6th or 7th grade, my mom got cancer. For a few years, it felt like nothing could ever go right for me, and it felt like it was never my fault. In high school, once most of these things had passed, and I was back to my normal semi-bullying ways, an older friend of mine, who I had confided in during the rough years, put it this way: you know that feeling when everything seems like it's going against you, and you had no hand in causing it? That's what kids that get bullied constantly feel like. Why are they refused the right to enjoy their interests and do what they want? I was flabbergasted. For weeks I went around the high school apologizing to kids I had bullied because I felt like such a piece of shit. As a girl, I liked playing rough with the boys in elementary school. And by playing rough, I mean kicking, hitting, and punching them whenever I got the chance. This led to girls being afraid of me and more boys keeping me company and attracting more male friends with the phrase, "If you can't stand a hit from her, then you aren't a real man." This one time, as we were playing, I threw a bottle full of water, not caring where it landed, as long as it hit a boy. It hit the smallest, kindest, and quietest guy in our class. He cried. I came and told him the usual, "Did it hurt that much? Here, you can hit me back," while I offered him the bottle. He shook his head and cleaned his face. "It's alright. I forgive you." It hit me so fucking hard, I kept thinking about it all day and cried when I got into my room after school. It felt gross to be me. Why did I do that? What was wrong with me? So I never hit anyone again, unless the other party agreed we would do so. I kept wrestling and doing martial arts with everyone, though I set clear limits and a safe word if it was too much. Did karma came back at me? Nah, but everything got way better since. One of the guys whom I punched the most asked me out later on, while kids from smaller grades came looking for me to deal with their bullies. I had quite the fame, so it just took a casual chat with their bullies to make them stop. As a bonus, my younger brother was never messed with because of it, which I'm very grateful for, because he's the exact opposite of me at his age. Fragile, sensible and really noble. After moving on from elementary school, I never saw the quiet boy again, but I see so much of him in the way my little bro acts, as a reminder of my wrongs, and who I must aspire to be. Not a bully, but someone who was bullied. I beat the ever-loving shit out of my bully. He used to have this habit of jumping on my back and humping me for some reason. He was a senior in high school, and I was a freshman. One day I dodged, and he went face first into a desk. When he was on the floor, I began to stomp on his face. I was saying something too, but I forgot what. The bullying ended after that. You gave him the old Raffy. I hate to use this phrase, but I guess I was one of the popular kids in high school, meaning I just knew a lot of people from sports and other clubs that branched out across multiple grades. From grades 9 to 12 I used this popularity to make some pretty relentless jokes against people I didn't like, or did genuinely like. I would say outrageously offside things about people, and I unfortunately have the ability to determine what an individual's biggest insecurity is, and I'd go for that. I never physically hurt anyone, but I know I hurt a lot of feelings by saying jokes that were almost never warranted. I guess my turning point was maturing. Once I left the bubble, that is high school, I realized how awful I had been to my peers without any repercussions for myself. One of the things I've been thinking about a lot lately is 10 or 20 years in the future, when these people are gonna flip through their yearbook and see my photo and tell their spouse or kid how big of a douche I was, and you know what? They'd be absolutely right to do that. I'm ashamed of who I was and have actively been trying to become a friendlier and kinder member of society. I still deal with a lot of the same insecurities I struggled with years ago, but I've realized now that my problems aren't a reason to treat others like shit. If I could do it all again, I'd do it a lot differently. I never want to be that person again. We picked on this boy in grades 4 to 5 who was a little different. We would say he smelt and such. Even made a game called Stinky Boy where we all ran away from him. The teacher made me sit with him for the year and I mocked him constantly. One day he invited me to his birthday. I was confused but still went. Turns out he thought I was his best friend and gave me one of 5 special sleepover invitations. He invited all of my friend group at the time, all of which made fun of him. I was the only kid out of our class of 30 he had invited to show up to this poor kid's birthday. He was so happy to see me. We played games all night, and I had so much fun with him. Turns out the reason we thought he was smelly was because he had to wear the same pair of old cloths, because his single father couldn't afford much else. Did I mention that his dad said to me that he had heard so much about me and how his son was so happy to have a friend like me? He even called my parents to tell them how happy he was that his son had finally found a friend. I hung out with him every snack time after that. Now in my final year of school I be sure to ask him what's up when I see him in the school as we grew apart and he finally found friends after I introduced him to some people. Looking back it makes me sad that kids can be so cruel. That poor kid. How sweet.